Testing. Yep. All right. So let's see here. I don't like it up like that. Why is my camera not focusing? Edit. Cancel. Settings. Cancel. This is pissing me off already. There we go. Now we're back in session. All right. Hey, can you hear the rattle of the light bulb in the background? Very faint. Okay, so it is annoying. All right, I'm gonna turn the fan off then. That way I don't have to worry about someone else hearing it. Hold on a second. Well, you have $300 headphones, but yeah, so I want to make sure that it doesn't affect anyone else if they can hear it too. So I'm just trying to be cautious because of this one. Alrighty. We'll give about 5 minutes or so, then I wore my pink today. Hold on. Didn't hear that one. Wore my pink today. I am the only one with a pink shirt. So welcome everyone to Chicks training. We're waiting. Me and Danny are just talking. We're waiting for everyone to come in here. Give it a little bit. If it gets hot, I'm going to put the fan back on. Let me check the thermostat. That's why it's set for 74. Just set the AC to 71. Yeah, see, it's getting too stagnant in here without the fan. I'm gonna have to put it back on. I'll put it on medium. Let's see. So when I do this, and I hold this like this, so I'm gonna have to hold it like this to show everything. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. I guess everyone forgot classes today. Do 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 do. Turn the computer that way so I don't have so much glare. T minus 1 minute. Oh, what a day. So for those of you that are waiting to me to start talking, we're just giving everyone a minute or so to get in here. So all right, everyone, welcome to ductulator training and basic duct sizing class today. This is basically so you can kind of have an understanding of what's going on when you're out in the field. This does not take place of the manual D. Okay. Let me get that foremost out and out there. This is not how you properly size a house with the proper programs. This is so when you're on a job and the customers are complaining of not enough airflow or too much or the airflow is screaming, this is to give you a basic understanding of how all this plays out. Okay. Now, the way we're going to do the class is we're doing it as if we're in my area. Every area is different. Every area has their own regulations and rules when it comes to sizing and manual D and manual J and everything else. This is a basic understanding. So we're running it as if you were in Virginia in my area. So you can't use my numbers at your location. Okay. This is strictly for Richmond, Virginia area. So I know those numbers by heart. And with energy code and everything else, the numbers have actually changed some, but we're going to run through this so you guys have a better understanding of duct work and what you're looking at. So the first thing we're going to do, everyone should know 12,000 BTUs equals 1 ton, right? And there is 400 CFM per ton. Those are basic standard principles all across the board. Okay. So those should be basic and standard. In my area, when I'm sizing a house pre 2010, 2015, somewhere in that ballpark, we used 600 square feet per ton. Okay. And that's the numbers we're just going to use today for training. It's different in your area. This does not take place in Manual D, but we're using those numbers today for training on how to use a ductulator. Okay. So keep that in mind when Jennifer and I get into the Manual D and Manual J. Those numbers are going to change from what we have here because trees, insulation, tightness of the house, sun rising, sun setting, windows, north, south, east, west facing, all that takes in place in that into that calculations. And if you have a house that's in the middle of a field with no trees, you know, the square footage might say 2 ton, but in all actuality, it's a 3 ton because you have such a massive heat load. So keep in mind, this is basics for my area. It's going to change in yours. So we got 600 square feet per ton. This is the basic settings of what we're going to go off with. So if I have a 1,200 square foot home, basically we're going to go with a 2-ton system. And keep in mind, this is just training. This is not what's going to work for you in your area. So we're going to throw some parameters out there. If I have a 1,380 square foot home, well, 1,400 would equal a 2.5 ton. I'm only 20 I'm only 20 square foot off of a 2.5 ton. So you can go 2.5, you can go 2, but if you go 2, you might starve. If you go 2.5, you might short cycle. So there's factors you got to look at. So keep that in mind. I got my rag. So basic understandings right here. So let's start with supply duct, okay? Let's start with manufacturers. Every residential manufacturer out there wants their system to be at a 0.5 static pressure. And that is taken with your manometer between your supply and return at the unit, okay? That's what they want to see. That's what they designed their systems to run. Knowing that when you have a ductulator, now there's slide rulers one, there's round ones, there's different designs, but they all have the same numbers on there, okay? And I'm just going to draw this out here. On mine, right here is a 0.1, okay? Over here, right about here, 0.05. This is my supply. This is my return. These are the measurements we're going to use to size the duct. Okay. So all my supply duct will be off the 0.1. All my return duct will be off the 0.05. That will give me my ½ inch of static that I need. And I know you're going, numbers don't look right. Trust me, I have sized and run loads of duct off this ductulator. My boss has run it through the program, and what I've done off this, everything was there. So, keeping that in mind, this is where we're going to start. You have to understand how many CFMs you can get out of ductwork. So, I wish I had a big permanent whiteboard, but I don't. So, we're going to go 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, 14, 16, 18, 20. Okay. We're going to do that. Now, very rarely do you see that, but let's go there. So what you're going to do, if you have a ductulator, you're going to take the round duct spot right here and set that for 6 inches. Okay. So we're set for 6. You're going to go to the 0.1 and look at the line it matches with. And that is about 115 CFM, because you have 100 and then the next numbers you have 50. So you have 10, 20, 30, 40. So it's about 105 CFM. Okay. We're going to put that on supply. I'm going to put a line. So your left number is supply, right number is return. We're going to go through our supplies first. So 105. So let's go to 8. That's at 225. 10. Right about 405. Okay. 12. We're going to get it right at, see, 657. So 675. And we're going to, on that, 14. We're going to put 1,000. 16. 1450. 18. 2,000. And just for the fun, let's see. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 2,600. It's a lot of air moving through a 20-inch duct. Okay. That's just supply, y'all. So you can see what you're moving. So if we go with return, so let's take the 6. And you're never really going to have a lot of 6-inch returns, but in case you ever have to run one, you're looking at 60, 70, 75. And you can see the difference in the numbers already. So we go to 8. 160, 10, 290, 275, excuse me. 12, 450, 14, 700, 16, 1,000, 18, 1,400, and 20, 15, 16, 17, 18, 1,800. Yes, never run a 6-inch return, but this is for learning. Correct. So you can see the difference here between your supply and return CFMs. In all actuality, there are other supplies out there. There are 5-inch supplies, there's 7-inch supplies. But for the purpose of class, we're just going to keep it basic and simple. We're not going to get into all this craziness. When we get into that craziness is when Jen gets to run it through the program. That's when the numbers start changing of saying, okay, well, this room here is what old school way would be, say a 6-inch, 2 6s, but actually it's 1 7-inch, you know? So this is a basic understanding. So you can know when you go to someone's house, you can just kind of pull this out and go, okay, let me look at some stuff and go, yeah, these numbers aren't right. They're not adding to this. And then you have your salesman come out and run a load calculation and they can go that from that route. But this gives you a basic diagnostic tool for airflow. So here's your basic numbers. Give everyone a second to write that down, screenshot it, whatever they want to do. But 20-inch return, you don't see those very often on residential. And usually when you're doing a 5-ton residential, you have more than just one return. So you're not going to really see a lot of 18 or 16s. You'll see multiple 14s, multiple 12s. If you got a house that's got a master bedroom, you'll have a return in their bedroom to cover the airflow in there because usually you have about 4 supply leads in there. So you need a return out. So yes, there's multiple returns in a house, not just one. Now this is all round duct measurements. This hasn't even gotten into the square duct. And that's a different ballpark. But what you can do, everyone, if you have your ductulator, slide it to 12 inches. Okay. Go around and slide it to 12. Okay. On your square duct dimensions, all right, you have the top number up here and a bottom number. If you look at the bottom number, the smaller dimension, everything we do square duct wise in this class is going to be by 8. So if you look at the 8 and line it up, it lines up with 16 by 8. Okay. So 16 by 8 is what would be the equivalent to a 12-inch round. So if you have to use square duct, it gives you the same CFM. So you can always, now every supply house I've ever dealt with has always sold square duct as 8 as their standard small dimension. That's standard almost everywhere. Anything bigger than 8 or smaller than 8, you have to have manufactured or made yourself. But they usually go from 8 by 8 all the way up to about 20 to 22 by 8. So you can always just, if you need to run square duct, just remember to start with your 8 and slide your ruler over. So let's say you need 2,000 CFMs by 8. That's about a 40 by 8 piece of duct. That's a big piece of duct. But here's the thing. If you have different dimensions, I can go 10 by 30, right? I can definitely go with different numbers. I can go a 15 by 19 and still get my 2000 CFMs. So there are other dimensions you can go with on square duct to get the airflow you need. You don't have to stand it by 8. But for our class purposes, by 8 is what we're going to stand by. So you have a basic understanding. So we know how many CFMs come out of each duct, right? Now the next question is, how many can you pull off of a duct? That's the next problem. So I'm going to do a little drawing here. Enjoy my art skills. So here's the layout of the house. Little basic rancher, nothing crazy. And yes, this is the layout of the house I used to live in. So that's why I use this layout. We were at 1,248 roughly square feet on this house. So the air handler was in the crawl space. And we're going to use different colors for all this stuff. But the main layout is going to be this. Of the house is going to be in black. My air handler sat here in the crawl space. We're going to use blue for supply, red for return. That is how it went. Now, my return here was a high return on the wall that had panned joists. If you know what pan joists is, where you take your joists, all the insulation out of it, the section, you put a piece of metal on the bottom, you blank off both ends of the joists, and the return duct taps into there. When you do that, you really need to seal all that stuff up. If not, seal it up, the joists, the duct, the metal, the wood, seal it up with mastic, because if not, you get what's called dry rot. And that is where the air going across the wood rots it out. I had a massive weak spot right here in front of that return where my foot almost went through the floor one day because the wood was so rotted from the return air because it wasn't sealed up properly. It was sucking air in through the carpet right there, down into the crawl space, into the system. So that can happen. So now I'm gonna lay out where my supply leads were on this house, so you can kind of understand some information. That one wasn't there. It was right here. So that's all my supply leads. I can't see this one really. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 supply leads. All right. Every supply lead on the house was 6 inch. But we're going to do a little in theory stuff. So this full bathroom and this half bathroom, they don't need a full 6 inch 100 CFMs blowing out of them. They're bathrooms. So 4 and 4. Wait, Jimmy, we didn't go over 4 inch. I know. It can be done. So if you go to 4 inch, it's off the chart. If you go to 5, it gets us at 65, and 6 gets us, like I said, right, 4 inch gets us right at 40. Okay. So in theory, these should have been 4 inches, but they were not. They were 6s. But 4 inch will give me my 40 CFM. It's just for bathrooms. Who needs them? Same with walk-in closets. By code, you have to have a supply lead in a walk-in closet just to supply air. You don't need a full 6 inch in a walk-in closet. Unless it's really huge like a bedroom. Then maybe yes. But like I said, in theory, we're going to just keep everything basic, simple. Take the 4 inch out, and we're just going to keep it at the 6 inch. So everyone has a basic understanding. So 6 supply leads, 10 supply leads at 100 CFM, because that's the basically, we're just going to make it even numbers. I have enough air to move 1,000 CFM. My house is 1248. I'm too big for a 2.5 ton. So the system was a 2 ton. Like I said, we're going to keep this basic simple, keep you understanding. Now, this line here and this line here, I am not going to take this line. I want to split this 500 this way, 500 this way. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So excuse me, 11 leads. My bad. It's 1100 CFM. I missed the lead. So we have to count that one there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I want to put air this way and air this way. So I need to come up with 2 taps. So if I split that 1100 CFM, that's what, 650 each. So take your slide ruler and set it for 650 at the 0.1, right? Once you set it for that 650, you come down here and that shows basically almost exactly 12 inches. So I would need two 12-inch rounds to come off of it. But we had square duck in the crawl space, so that square duck would be close to 14 by 8. So there you go. So that's what we had. But we're going to factor in round duck just because to keep it simple and easy. But we'll go over the square duck, rectangle duck numbers. So two 12s. So if I put 12-inch here and 12-inch here and ran all this in 12 and all this in 12, I am not going to move any air. I'm not going to have any static pressure. I'm not going to have any airflow. The system's not going to work right. It's going to have massive problems. No dehumidification. I'm going to be uncomfortable as can be, everybody. You think about this, and this is the best analogy I can tell you. As a kid, everyone took their wrapping paper tubes from Christmas time, put them to the mouth, and would blow through them and make noises like a cone or whatever. When you would blow through that tube, you barely felt any air out of it. If you took a McDonald's straw and you would blow through that, this big fat milk straw, you could get some velocity and force. And they were great for spitballs. But if you try to blow through a coffee stir, you are just barely moving any air and you're getting red in the face trying to blow as hard as you can through that coffee stir. That is the best way I can explain the same with this. Okay. If you go too big, you're not going to move any air. If you go too small, you're not going to move any air. It's just going to scream. You're just going to be like, what the hell? You need to have the proper size from large to medium to small. You need to size the ductwork as you take supply leads off. You have to drop the size of the ductwork down to increase your static pressure back up, to keep the velocity going, to allow it to push the air out. Now, I posted a video on Chicks a couple days ago of an old house that we were doing a change out at, that the ductwork came off the end cap. That's a major no-no. Within the last foot, I don't like seeing it, and most people don't like seeing it either. The last foot of duct, you need to have that just not touched or disturbed so it can keep that static up. Because think about this, your air is going down and smacking and coming back, and then as it comes back, it's going out the leads. Okay, it's creating that static pressure to push out. Okay, air, just like water, will go through path of least resistance. Same with refrigerant. It's path of least resistance on this. So it's got to go all, it's going to shoot it, pressurize the system. And if it doesn't have anything to pressurize down here at the end, it's just going to blow out. So that's why you need to have that last foot or so undisturbed so it can pressurize the system. So with my 12-inch, you generally don't like to have supply leads backtrack. And when I mean backtrack, here's my bathroom. I'm backtracking my airflow of the direction it's actually going. You generally want to see the leads either kind of straight through or even a little forward angled to kind of have that push. So it's going because the air is blowing that way. You kind of want it to go through. I don't mind straight backtracking as long as you're not going too far. I'm okay with you backwards. It does. If I try to take a lead from here back over to here, it's not going to work very well. Here, maybe. This is fine. So we're going to go 1 6-inch here. Got a 6-inch here. 6-inch here. 6-inch here. And a 6-inch here. Okay. Now your pipe from your manufacturer comes in either 4 or 5 foot sections. I prefer to use the 5 foot sections. Makes your math a lot easier and everything else. On this side here, we're going to put a 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. Okay. So I have 5 and 6 leads. So what I want to do, we're going to start on the bedroom side first. I'm going to put 5 foot of 12, go 10-inch, And I'm going to see if you notice right here, I split these two sixes right here and go 8. Five foot of 12, split it, 10, 8. Now I might have 10 foot of 10, and these are going to be 5 foot and 5 foot. So what that allows me is, as I take the first lead out, I know my 12 is good for X amount of CFMs. Okay, 400 CFMs. Let me throw that number to confirm I'm correct just by throwing numbers out there. All right, 12 inch is good for 700. So I take one off. So I got 700 coming in here. I take one off, right? Now I've got 600 to go this direction. I'm going to take 3 off. Number reduced down to 8. 10 inch is good for 400. So I could take the max leads I want to take out of 10 is 3 inch. You don't want to take 4. I only want to take out 3. 12, because 12 is good for 700. The max you want to take out is 500. Okay. Depending on how far down the line you have to go or how many leads you have, you want to make sure you don't take out more than what you have downstream. And my 8 inch is good for 200 CFMs. I'm only taking out 1. Same on that side here. Now, could I have done 2 off the 10 and 2 off the 8? I very well may have and could have. But we're not going to do that. We're not going to maximize the amount of air on a system like that. So knowing that I'm pushing 2 leads off the 12, that's 700, right? Dropping it down to 10, I've now increased my velocity and my static. I've increased that velocity to push the rest of it this way, increase velocity again, and go that direction. Now I'm going to return. I need to make sure I calculate for 1,000 CFM. So I'm going to put 1,000 at my 0.5. And that is going to give me, y'all in the comments, you can talk and ask questions. There's about 4 of y'all on here right now. And for those who are watching this later, please feel free to comment your questions in the system on YouTube or whatever. Reach out to me. I'll answer them best I can. So return 16 inch. Now, there's one more key factor when doing this stuff. Your supply and return grills. Okay. And people are like, what do you mean my supply and return grills? Well, if you have an improper size return grill that is too small, it will whistle. If you have a supply grill that can't handle the CFM, it will whistle. So on most ductulators, there is a grill selector on the back of it. This will help you understand, this is the Lima one. So this has their grills in there. So you can tell you, okay, I need to have this many CFMs. I need to select this grill. All right. Now, a 20 by 20 flat grill. Okay. Depending on your manufacturer, don't take this as the word of gospel. But depending on your manufacturer, a 20 by 20 flat grill, stamped grill, no filter grill whatsoever, is generally good for 2.5 tons of air. The minute you put a 20 by 20 filter grill in, it drops it down to 2 tons. So your filter grills, and I'm just using 20 by 20 because it's a standard. Filter grills do restrict a little more airflow on your readings, so in your measurements. So keep that in mind. If you got someone who say, "Oh, I've got a 20 by 20 on a 2.5 ton system," the customer wants to change it to a filter grill. Well, that grill is going to start whistling a little bit because you're losing a couple of 100 CFMs through it by putting the filter there. So keep that in mind. Now, 16 inch is good for 1,000 CFMs. We have 800. The system's only going to put out. Could I size that for 800? I sure as well can. Because let's see, 800 is 1475 on a 14-inch on a 800 CFM on my return at 0.05 is a 14.75 inch. Well, do they make a 15-inch? No, they don't. If I took it down to 14, I'm only getting 700 CFMs on my return. Is that going to cause a problems, 100 CFMs? In theory, most not likely. But when you run it through the program of the proper sizing with the manual D and manual J and the proper load calculations and duct design, it can throw it off. And when we get to that, we'll go there. But for class purposes only, we're going to keep it at the 16 just because. But like I said, this will help you as a good diagnostic tool in the field if you have a problem with the customer's house with airflow. So knowing I need 2 tons of air, and if I want a filter grill, I'm gonna put a 20 by 20 filter grill. If not, I can put a filter on the system, put a 20 by 20 flat grill, however you want to do that, but make sure you use the grill selector to make sure you're getting the proper sizes. So if you look on this side here of mine, right? And then if you look down here, grill selector, CFM, pressure loss, face velocity, and effective area. So that's the effective area is the open area of the grill. So as I scroll down here, I want something that's gonna give me 1,000 CFMs. So for cheating purposes, I open it up. I look right here. So the closest one I have is 1,078. So I'll just push this back in. Do I get 1,078? Pressure loss is 0.05. Well, that's what we're sizing our return as, 0.05. Face velocity feet per minute is 500. Effective area square feet 2.16. That gives me a 20 by 24 grill. Okay. That is my return grill selector. For my supply, I want to put out 100 CFM. So as you can see, this line here is my CFM, and it's got a lot of choices. I want to go basic, cheap model. Okay. So let's see here. 115, 95. Your standard register size is a 4 by 10, right? That's standard everywhere. You can go 10 by 6, 4 by 12, you can go different routes. So my register selector number 602, the top there, if it'll focus. See 4 by 10 down here in the bottom only gives me, it's not going to focus for y'all, but it only gives me 60 CFM. Okay. So that 4 by 10 is not the greatest. So let's go to a different 4 by 10. Let's go to the 800. All right. The model 800 grill, as you can see, I'm on the 800. If I scroll down here, there you go. It gives me 85 CFM. We're getting better. So let's go down here to the 900V. All right. 900V is a more commercial style supply grill, but you can see I'm there. 160 CFM. Right? And it will throw 14 feet. It's a lot of air. That's a lot of throw. So you got to look at those numbers there and figure out what supply register would be good for you. So if I go back to the 602, My throw is only 5 feet, so I'm not moving a lot of air. 5 foot's a good spot to go with. If I go with the 800, my throw is 8 feet. So because I'm at 85 CFM, I would say that's a perfect, well, medium to round grill, register grill to go with. Perfectly fine. They also have the 150s, which is your ceiling grills, 6, 8, 10, and 12. So if I do a 6 inch on the 150, let's just say because we're in the attic, putting it in the attic, the 156 inch only throws 3 feet. Not a lot of throw there. I'm not getting air movement as much as I'd like it to have comfortability. I want to be able to, if I have a grill in the ceiling, to be able to walk up to it and I should be able to feel it in my face. At 5'7", I should be able to feel that air in my face. Your red supply grills should be throwing it. Your supply grills, the 4x10s or whatever rectangle grill you have, should be able to feel that in your face at that height. If you can't feel it, you have airflow issues, in my opinion. But the charts never lie. The sizing never lies. This is just a basic understanding for you to understand how to use this. So if you were to take, let's see here, rectangular duct 16x10 on the supply, it should give you 950 CFMs, which is equivalent to a 14-inch round. It's just size under 14 by 13 and a half inches. And it's not going to focus, is it? Come on, focus. Nope, not going to focus. We tried. So just because I can't use round duck, I can always use square duck, and I can always go with different measurements on my square duck. Now, keep in mind, if you live in Texas, Maine, Florida, Arizona, California, Colorado, all these numbers are going to differ for your area. This is for my area. This is my calculation. This is what I teach on, just to give my students in my classes when I taught a basic understanding, so they go this. So now you have a basic understanding. Let's throw a little kicker in here. I went to a house that the customer had an addition put on. Okay. They went from a 2-ton to a 3-ton system. 2-ton. All right. So they added an extra 400 square feet. So we're going to bump this out. And there's my 400 square foot addition right here. Okay. Here's my air handler. Well, I'm going to bump this up to a 3-ton, and I need to get, 600 square foot, not 600 square feet. So I need to get 400 CFMs in here. So I'm just going to come off of this drawing here, and let's see. Let's use a different color for that. Let's try orange. See how well orange works on this. I'm going to bring 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Not the best color, but you can kind of see what I'm talking about. They brought 4 more leads off of this one trunk line over to handle this area. And they made this a 3-ton. The problem with that is the 12, the 10, and the 8 were extremely undersized for the supply air. My return was completely undersized for the return air. When I went to this house, I turned it on. And the customer says, yeah, ever since we had the new system put in, you know, 2 years ago, everything is just, it just doesn't seem to cool right. And it's really noisy. I'm like, really? So I went in the crawl space and looked, and this is what I found. You cannot enlarge a system on existing ductwork and take taps off of it and expect it to work properly. This whole trunk line over here needed to be redone, properly sized, return added in order to make this house comfortable for these people. I went out there. We had I think it was like 212s coming off of it. I can't remember exactly the size. And I looked, I saw 3 tons, and the one side was fine because nothing changed, but the back side did. So we recommended a new duct system for the house, not just the one side, the both sides. So we redo the entire duct system. New supply, new returns, properly sized supply boxes. Because also, if you look at your unit and you see a 20 by 22 unit and the supply opening is 16 by 20, you want that supply box no smaller than 16 by 20. You don't want to go smaller than it. You don't want to be blanking off supply air, and if you don't want to be blanking off the openings at all. Those openings are there to move the proper amount of air through that supply and return to that unit. You start blanking them off, you start having problems. Well, the problem was you couldn't, by the way it was designed. You had no room to, because the unit was right here and I'm trying to get back here. My supply was here. You're talking about re-hooking back around and adding a whole lot more duct work. The supply box was blanking off half of the, because it was a smaller supply box, it was blanking off part of the supply opening. The return was about a quarter of the way blanked off. So I wasn't moving the proper air to begin with. And this thing, the return, you open turn it on, you could just hear this extreme whistle. And it was just, there's nothing you can do about it. They needed a new duct system to in order to properly move the right amount of air. It wasn't dehumidifying, it wasn't cooling very well. It was short cycle. There's just everything you could think of that would be wrong with airflow was this house. It was an airflow nightmare. But yes, and if you can't just add another trunk line off of it. You have to, because if the position we were in, we couldn't. We had to redesign the duct system. We had to reposition the unit to get the proper airflow so we could take the addition and make it its own trunk line and then put 2 more trunk lines in. And in order to do that, we would have to turn the air handler, reposition it to get it to work properly. Now, if you notice right here, here's my unit, here's my supply box. Notice I came off the sides and not the end. Okay. That's another thing. You want to avoid coming off the end of your supply box if you have 2 trunk lines. Now, if I had my air handler over here facing that direction, I'm gonna erase this so y'all can, so I can draw this out so you can kind of see a little better. Because believe it or not, supply box connections are important as well. Because if they are not connected properly and you do something wrong, you may very well not get the proper airflow as well. So here's my unit. Here's my supply. We're going this direction. Okay. If I were to take a supply box tap here and this is the front, and another one off back here. Where's all my air going to go? It's going to shoot right down this main trunk. It's going to bypass this side trunk. Okay. If you're pushing air straight through path of least resistance, it's going this way and not this direction. You can put a damper in here, little handle, and angle this at a 45 to try to force more air in that direction. But in theory, it's not going to work. You should come off the top, the sides, but you want to avoid coming off the front as much as possible. If you have an air handler system that has supply duct going this direction and then another one that comes this direction, try to come off the side. So you're coming like this. Okay. So you can see now my air is hitting this, is deadheading, and then we're going to push on both directions. And it's just basically taking your arms and doing this number like this. Okay. One arm up, one arm down. That's what you're looking at. Okay. Or if you need to do a U shape, you can take them and run them both that direction. All right. Because let's say you need to, this one needs to come all the way over here. So you can take this, run it over here, and go like that. You really want to avoid doing that. Now, if you're looking at your supply box, okay, this is the side view. The first few inches, like right here and right here and right here, you really don't want to take anything out of, okay? I was always taught, and when the duct design class I took years and years ago, you really want to take in these corners right here. That was what I was taught. A lot of people will just take it out the dead center. Kind of tumbles around a little bit. I was also taught when you're going from a supply box to round pipe, what you want to do is say you got 12 inches, okay? And when we go through manual D, manual J, this will also come into there. But this is kind of, like I said, just so you have any kind of thoughts, just so you can kind of understand. So here's my supply box. If I have 12-inch round pipe, I want to put a 12 by 12 square to round. Because that will get me a 12 by 12 square round, gives me a little bit more surface area on that box to kind of get a little bit more air in there. Okay. All right, Jen, have a good one. I'm wrapping up in about 10, 15 minutes. I should be wrapped up. So squared around will give you that airflow, a little bit more for airflow, and gives you a little better connection. You can put a round airtight here, no problem. You can put one over here, but I don't recommend ever coming into that first few inches or this front close to the unit as possible. Now I know we do square duct that sometimes kind of takes that whole section out but you're also doing that whole area. Okay. No problem. Air handlers, furnaces, they all have that opening that you want to use that. Now, there is a kicky and a kicker that does happen out in the field. I know I've run across it before numerous times. I've seen gas furnaces without a return box and the return tapped into the side of the cabinet. Per the manufacturer, that is okay. Do I like seeing that with a 10-inch or 12-inch round flex tapped in the side of it? Personally, not really. I'd rather see a return box on there. But is it allowed by manufacturer? Yes, it is. because we all do it in the garages. We would set furnaces on the base, set the furnaces on the ground, and bring our returns to the side of the furnace because you didn't have the room to put a box in there because of how the duct system was or whatever. So keep that in mind. Um, if you're not sure about something when it comes to installing a piece of equipment, there's a great pamphlet that comes with it called Manufacturer's Installation Instructions. Okay. Pull them out, read them, look over them, make sure you're doing what is required. You also have building code, you have manufacturer installation instructions, you have inspectors. Um, a lot of areas are requiring load calculations before they'll issue permits for stuff like that as well. Now, there's two different codes. There's residential building code and there's commercial building code. Okay. We're just going to focus on residential. And one of the weeks of the training, while we're doing all this, I'm going to break out the residential code book, the international residential code book, and we're going to go through the residential code book. Okay. We're going to go through the chapters of mechanical, drain lines, so you kind of understand some of the stuff that's out there. And when I go in the drain lines, some people are like, whoa, we're going to go over conditioned crawl spaces. Okay. Go over the requirements for those as well, because people have done them wrong. But these are also all parts of airflow. Okay. And if you don't do it right, the system won't work right. So, any questions you have on how to read or use a ductulator? Okay. An air duct calculator, ductulator, however it may you want to call it. This is a good starting point for you. Understanding airflow and how it goes is there. Making sure you have enough supply to return. Now, I know there is someone will probably ask this question down the road. Can you have too many returns? Yes, you can. Now, I can have a return in every bedroom and a small one in the hallway as long as they're all sized right. Okay. So if I put an 8 in each bedroom, I got a 4-bedroom house here, master and 3 bedrooms. If I put a return, an 8-inch in each bedroom, and a 10 in the master, and a 10 in the hallway, as long as I'm sizing that return duct to handle the load to make sure I'm not putting too much return. If I were to put 10-inch returns in each room, I'm not going to have any static pressure on my return. It's just going to be like nothing. But if I take my returns that CFM required and split it up between multiple returns, then you're fine. That is key there. Making sure you say, okay, I need to have 800 CFMs of return air static. So let's see here. 8-inch is good for return 150 CFMs. So if I do 4 8s, that's 300 CFMs right there. If I do a 10, that is 275. So now that's what, 575 CFMs? If I do another 10, there we go. So I do 2 10s and 3 8s or 4 8s. I have 4 8s. I only need 3. So 3 8s, that's 300, 450. Right? Yeah. That's 450. And I do a 10 in the hallway. That's 275. So that is 725. I generally have my return air. Okay. If I do a 6, which no one ever does, they never do 6s. A 6 gives me my 75 CFM, which covers my 800. But yeah, as long as you calculate the proper amount of CFMs you need for return, you can have multiple returns in a house. Back in the 50s, okay, they would put supply grills on the interior walls and return grills on the exterior walls and allow them to work, or vice versa. I had one house that the supply was in interior, return was in the exterior. But I would see that you'd have multiple small returns on the interior walls, supplies on the exterior walls, and that's how they move the air across the house in one return. So I appreciate everyone coming today. I appreciate the ones who are going to watch us down the road. If you watch us down the road, feel free to post questions in the comments. If I don't get to them in time, message me on Chicks, tag me in a post on Chicks, Jimmy Hesbach. I'm more than happy to respond and answer any questions you have on this stuff, because this is a key and a good basics to start with what Jen is going to be getting into with me later on. And when we get into manual D and stuff, we're going to get into code. I'm going to have the code book. We're going to have a ductulator, and we're going to go from that route. So everyone have a good Easter weekend. Jen has got book club right now, so that's where she's at. And I will see everyone in a couple weeks. Thank you for watching.